So for the past few weeks, I've been uploading about 2 shorts a day to review each individual story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view for the story celebrating 40 years of it. But this is going to be my full review. I will be talking about each individual story, so timestamps are down below for that. But once I finish my talk about each individual story, I will then be talking about the story as a whole. All aspects of it, the entire book. That's what I'm going to be talking about. But first, let's talk about each individual story, so timestamps down below if you want to jump ahead. This is my review of Any Work Worth Doing by Amal El-Mohtar, the first story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. This story is from the perspective of Marsh, basically revolving around him trying to implement Darth Vader's direction to double their efforts in order to get the Death Star completed within the Emperor's time frame. Okay, what can I do? And his second day was realize what was going on is the fact that the Emperor didn't want a completed, but wanted it operational. So it would be an operational Death Star, not a completed Death Star to lure the rebels in. So that's what he realized, and through this, we also, that story being told, we learn about Gerard. We learn that he likes doing physical drafting. He views machines much like organics. But it was amazing. It was a great story. Got us insight into this character that we only saw, twice in Return of the Jedi? But yeah, that's my review. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section, and of course, may the Force be with you. So I finished reading Fancy Man by Szoztak, the second story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. So this is the Max Rebo story. And we find out a little bit more about him being a musician, all that kind of normal stuff. There's 2 main parts. Him trying to escape Jabba's sail barge when it's destroyed. So we don't know if he survives that, but he does get flung into the desert. But also his story on getting to Jabba's palace. It's a hilarious story. Though my favorite gag is Gungan movers who are helping him move his organ into the transport. Their company is called 2 Gungans and a hover truck. That is so clearly a parody of 2 men and a truck. My favorite joke, only because it was so obviously parodying something from real life. But yeah, it was a good story. I do think I definitely like the previous story a little bit better, but you know what, that's just my personal opinion. But I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and of course, may the Force be with you. Today I'm reviewing The Key to Remembering by Olivia Chadha, the third story in Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. So this is the story of EV-99. So that is the droid who is responsible in charge of the Jabba's droid pool and basically torturing the droids. And her quest basically, to understand droid intelligence, droid sentience, AI if you will. A lot of it comes through her meeting with R2-D2 when she finds out that he hasn't had a memory wipe in basically forever, which is something we know is true with R2-D2. And that makes her realize that probably the key that she's missing to understand why, some droids maybe, respond to pain more, or a bit more independent, whatever, is memory, having that memory. Existence is built up upon memory. Your personality is all built up on memory. Memory is a very important part with humans. Organic, so it makes sense the same is true for droids. So after everything that occurs in Return of the Jedi, we get another scene. She is basically fixed up and becomes a bartender in Mos Eisley and bumps into R5. And a certain character from The Mandalorian, Peli, is mentioned. And 99 gives R5 some piece of advice that, we actually seen his story in The Mandalorian. This story actually connects to The Mandalorian, and I love it for that. It connects the stories well together and is thoroughly enjoyable. Those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. And of course, may the Force be with you. Fortuna Favors the Bold by Kwame Mbalia is the fourth story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. So this is Bib Fortuna's story. We learned that there's a lot of things he hates. He hates so much stuff he actually keeps a list. And at number 1 is Jabba the Hutt. And basically the story tells us he's actually planning on killing Jabba, but Princess Leia doesn't get to him first. The only confirmed survivors for Jabba's sail barge are Bib Fortuna, Max Rebo, which we already knew, another member of Max Rebo's band, and then 1 Gamorrean. And not to mention, Tatooine Paddy Frogs is the thing that Bib Fortuna hates that Jabba eats. So at the end of the story, he does try one, and it describes it as tangy. So that's to indicate, I think, a little bit of change on him. That was a good, fun story, and that's pretty much what I gotta say. It was great to get this insight to Bib Fortuna, and the mentality he had taking over Jabba's empire. But yeah, that's all I have for you today, so let me know what you thought of this. As always, may the Force be with you. Dune Sea Songs of Salt and Moonlight by Thea Guanzon is the fifth story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. So this is telling the story of one of the singers in Jabba's palace, the character named Jess. Sure, they included a description, but I couldn't picture the character. Minor background character, that much I do know, and basically how she got work at Jabba's palace to basically pay off for the debt that her father had, so that way bounty hunters wouldn't be going after him. Yeah, complicated, but at the very end she does able to escape Jabba's palace, which is also coincidentally when everything's going on at the Sarlacc pit. Makes sense. And she returns home. This is also like the day after she found out her father passed, so she had no reason to stay there anymore, and she's able to actually reunite with her boyfriend, who clearly she tried to keep this hidden from, hurt the relationship, but he's definitely, willing. I think he definitely understands what was all going on. He even tried to pay off her father's debts from his money that he won swoop racing to try to give her an out, but he didn't have enough money, and of course, even if he did, Jabba was probably going to find someone to trap him, like she had become trapped by him, because they'll make deals with things, so things go pretty sour. It's a pretty good story. It does kind of remind me of some of from the Legends book Tales from Jabba's Palace, where the story doesn't really have too much to go with the actual plot of the episode, just this is what this character's actual story is in the background. But you know what? I really do like seeing that stuff. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and of course, may the Force be with you always. The Plan by Saladin Ahmed is the sixth story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this is the story of the Rancor Keeper, Mali Kikis. We learn about his backstory. He basically grew up on Corellia, basically dirt poor poverty. He was abandoned by his mother, and that's sad, but one cold evening, basically a person who took care of people's beasts, pets, animals, all that, found him and basically took pity on him because one of his animals took a liking to Mali Kiki, and so he learned a lot about basically taking care of animals. Being around animals, taking care of them was the one way he was able to focus. So we learned that he probably would have a real cause, some form of learning disability, something maybe like ADD, attention deficit disorder, or something else. But being around animals and caring for them is one way he found to able to focus his mind and pay attention to what's going on, i.e. something he actually liked to do. A big part of it is the idea is the legend that if a beast eats a Jedi, that the beast keep her in some form way to get some wishes. Obviously, probably not true, and yeah, so he's kind of happy when Luke Skywalker arrives. Obviously, we know it doesn't happen, and so he ends before the tragedy that goes. But we now know an additional reason why the Rancor Keeper was so sad, not just because he had bonded with the Rancor, but also because he had hoped he could make a wish to get him and the Rancor out of Jabba's palace and have them both be free. But you know what? That's actually quite a good ending. That twist on it. He's more than just the Jabba's Beastkeeper. He had a connection with the Rancor, and he had hoped they could get out of Jabba's palace. That's all I have for you today. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and of course, may the Force be with you. Reputation by Taro Sim is the seventh story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this is the Boba Fett story. It's basically mostly him reflecting on his reputation and how he had to work to earn it. He literally said that as a line at the end, right before he goes off to fight Luke Skywalker and the other rebels above the Sarlacc pit. Well, we all know how that goes for him. There is one line that connects nicely with his story in the book of Boba Fett, as he reflects on he wonders what it would be like to be the one giving orders instead of looking in the alcoves and shadows. So I thought that was a nice to connect there. Establish his idea of being the one in charge wasn't a new idea. It's something he had thought of previously. So there's not too much more to discuss, but that's all I have for today. I would love to hear your thoughts on this story in the comment section down below. And of course, may the Force be with you. Kickback by Arsenault Rivera is the eighth story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. So this story is actually following one of Jabba's guards, specifically the one that Luke kicks and knocks into the Sarlacc pit. And we find out actually a lot about him, that he has a family, a husband, a son, and a daughter, and that apparently Jabba pays him pretty well, and he's able to afford them quite expensive gifts that normally that his neighbors can give to their kids. So Jabba at least does pay well, so I guess there's that. But at the same time, the story makes us feel for him that he won't be able to, get to the point where he'll someday retire and be able to live a peaceful life with his family. But then again, he's working for Jabba the Hutt, a crime lord, so it does kind of make sense why that happens that way, that he doesn't get that happy ending. Like I said, it's a fun little story, little insight into this one character that we never really thought about before. But that's all I have for you today. I would love to hear your thoughts, and of course, may the Force be with you. Everyone's a Critic by Sarah Glenn Marsh, the ninth story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this is a story about Salacious, the quacky monkey lizard that Jabba has. His entire goal is to make Jabba laugh, and apparently Salacious thinks he has a pretty positive relationship with Jabba. So at the same time, since he's not the smartest creature in the past, he doesn't quite realize that his relationship with Jabba is not the best relationship. He knows that if he makes Jabba laugh, everything's gonna be good for him, but he does understand that not making Jabba laugh is bad for him, but he doesn't quite understand that. He's definitely taken advantage of by Jabba more than he realizes. So at the same time, he does consider Jabba to be his friend, partially because he has a much better life with Jabba than he did before Jabba. After Jabba's death, he wants to take revenge, so he purposely attacks C-3PO. And yeah, he goes into the Sarlacc pit, and sounds like he had a pretty good life, but he just chose the wrong friend. That's my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment section, and of course, may the Force be with you. Satisfaction by Kristin Baver is the 10th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. So this is the story that is about Thea Snooters. I really don't like her character. She was annoying in her appearance as a Clone Wars, she was annoying in Return of the Jedi, and she was annoying in this story. But you know what? Nice and consistent, I do appreciate that. And I do actually appreciate how the story also calls back to what we know about her from the Clone Wars, basically was involved with Zero the Hutt before killing him, all that stuff. And apparently she still sees figments of him in her imagination. Yeah, she has some issues. And I do not like her. And you know what? This story confirms I do not like her. She's vain, egotistical, and just, you know what? Not a nice person. And I really do like how this story really highlighted. Sometimes they do make these characters more sympathetic, nice snooters, and I like it that they kept it that way. So I hope you enjoyed this short review, and of course, may the Force be with you always. My Mouth Never Closes by Charlie Jane Anders is the 11th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this story has totally changed how we look at the Sarlacc. This is, of course, a Sarlacc story. Star Wars can be kind of silly at first, but it's honestly a great story. To put it simply, this Sarlacc, because apparently it's multiple, they have their own language, they have culture, they're intelligent, is basically a vegetarian, a vegan. He does not like eating meat, and is very disappointed that people keep on throwing meat into his beak, into his mouth. He tries to put it in his nice stomach so he can deal with them a little bit better, but he does not like the taste. And he's happy when he meets C-3PO because it's someone who can actually communicate with him. And he does not like Boba Fett being in his stomach. He can't digest the Metal Man, and is happy that Boba Fett was able to cut his way out. Of course, we know what happens in the book of Boba Fett, and that's exactly where this story ends. Why does he have to have such a tragic ending? He did not want this. He just wanted to live in harmony, in connection with the Force, with just nature around him, eating plant life and all that. That's all he wanted. He arrived on Tatooine when it was a lush tropical jungle world, and he died with Tatooine, but just much later when Boba Fett sought revenge, when he didn't need to seek revenge. So yeah, that's why I'm going to end this review, because this has really just turned how we think of the Sarlacc, at least the one on Tatooine, on its head. So let me know your thoughts down below, and of course, may the Force be with you always. Kernels and Husks by Jason Fry is the 12th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this story is following one of Palpatine's advisors, Sim Allo. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correct, because all Palpatine's advisors have weird names, and they all have unbearable contempt for each other. The one that we follow is, basically he thinks himself better than all the others, because he's not giving into their petty squabbling as much as they are, but they're all the same. They're all different sides of the same coin, the same dice, whatever term you want to use. There's nothing special about any of them except for they have all betrayed people, climbed ladder, the corporate greed, bureaucratic greed, whatever. They climbed up all to get to the same point and all are beholden to the Emperor. Now sure, Sim thinks the Emperor can't live forever, and he positioned himself and thus his daughter as well to swoop in and take power should Palpatine die. Of course, we know what's going to happen, but he doesn't. But you know what? It is a good story because it just shows how much of a contempt all Palpatine's advisors are, how little power they really have, yet they think they have so much. So those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. And of course, may the Force be with you always. The Light That Falls by Akemi Bowman is the 13th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. And this is the story of one of the dragon snakes on Dagobah, as Yoda is passing away into the Force and becomes one with the Force. And apparently the darkness in the Dark Side Cave is being unleashed. So yeah, that could be quite interesting. It's changing the balance of the ecosystem in Dagobah. Changing the behaviors of the different creatures. So it could be quite interesting. A short story reflecting on how Yoda's passing into the Force is affecting Dagobah. And you know what? It's a fun story, and I very much enjoyed it. But those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. And of course, may the Force be with you always. From a Certain Point of View by Alex Jennings is the 14th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. So this is Obi-Wan's story. So one thing that I really did appreciate about the story is it referenced the events of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, while also referencing pretty much everything that Obi-Wan has experienced in some form, largely relying on the fact that he's a Force ghost, therefore past, present, future don't mean quite the same thing to him anymore, being part of the cosmic Force. But basically, it's the bulk of it though is he sees like Dagobah basically gasp at Yoda's death, and then he gives his conversation with Luke, which in fact they actually expand upon it in this story, basically touching on that Obi-Wan through the Force told Luke more stuff than he actually spoke aloud. That's the general impression, but you know what? It was a great story and I thoroughly enjoyed it, but I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. And of course, may the Force be with you always. No Contingency by Fran Wilde is the 15th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this is the Mon Mothma story. Basically, it's her getting the intelligence that Palpatine is going to be on the Death Star because it's Palpatine's itinerary, which is how they know. And of course, it's one of the few times where she actually is going to do something herself that is more operative. That's no statecraft, which is much more what she's used to. She's more used to being a politician and leading, not going on the undercover mission, which does fit in nicely with what we see of her in Andor. And Lucin's actually mentioned in here, so carve out your Andor that way too. And Andor himself too, I should mention. It's a great story, gives him more insight into Mon Mothma. She's shown to be the more cautious leader, unlike they who takes more risks. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts from this story. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. And of course, may the Force be with you always. The Burden of Leadership by Danny Moore is the 16th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this is Lando's story. So, obviously, a lot of it is he's comparing leadership to playing Sabak and basically showing what you need to show, or what you know people need to see, that kind of stuff, like, i.e. not doing a blank face, but actually showing something that you intend to show, but not necessarily reflective of what you actually know. So that's a big part of the story, of course, but we also find out that several members of Cloud City's either security force or just residents have made their way to the rebellion with Lando. Some of them are more committed to the rebellion than others, and the main incident in the story is basically him dealing with the situation where one of them reveals that he's not fully injured, in fact planning to potentially desert during the Battle of Endor, and Lando basically successfully talks him out of it, but probably gonna put him in a position where if he does slip up, it's not gonna be as damaging to the rebellion and to him personally. It's a very good story, gave us some more insight into Lando's character, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it in the comment section. But in the meantime, thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you always. Gone to the Winner's Circle by Patricia A. Jackson is the 17th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this story is following one of the scout troopers chasing Luke and Leia on the speeder bikes, specifically one who has a background in bike racing and joined the Empire because the rebels accidentally destroyed basically destroyed him and his brother's racing shop, or whatever exactly was, repair shop. So basically he joined the Empire to get revenge, and that revenge blinded him to the danger that the rebels actually imposed on the Empire. He ignored the fact that, he sees the lights and basically thought, okay, I'll get this rebel, without actually thinking, maybe I should think of a better way of dealing with that. Yeah, his revenge drove him, and, well, it drove him right into a tree after Luke sliced off the steering reins of his speeder bike. But that's just my thoughts on this story. I would love to hear yours in the comment section. And of course, may the Force be with you always. One Normal Day by Mary Kenny is the 17th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this is the Wicked story. And most of it is actually set basically before the events of the film, and we get to see the Empire arriving on Endor from his and the Ewoks' perspective. Very intriguing. I also very much how they referenced a lot of Wicked's adventures from both live-action Ewok movies that are not considered canon anymore. I guess they might be now, and also the Ewok television show. Both of them reference, and I really did like that. And so I thought it was a very good story, gave us some more insight into Wicked's character, somebody who eventually always finds and is a bit tired of it and wanted a day off. But then the Empire came, and then at the end of the story is when he meets Leia, and he said, well, she's offering him food, so she can't be all that bad. And that is where the story ends. Like I say, it was a great story, but those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment section down below. And as always, may the Force be with you always. Divine Inspiration by Paul Creeley is the 19th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. So this is another Ewok story. Specifically, we are following the shaman, the religious leader of the tribe, and he answers the questions why the Ewoks worship the C-3PO. Basically, he looks the way their description of their god, who they call the Golden One, looks. That's why they worship him. And the religious leader, he basically has a plan to have the tribe move to safety, because we know that's not going away. But he was looking forward to eating ham, because apparently cocky tastes good according to him. It's a hilarious story, got some insight into Ewok religious culture and religion, but it's also kind of interesting to see, you have someone who is basically like, this younger generation, all they want to do is blah. In this case, it's fight the intruders while he just wants to hide, but you know what, those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts, and of course, may the Force be with you always. The Buy-In by Suzanne Walker is the 20th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. And this is the story that's following Noah Wexley. So she's a character from the Aftermath books. Very good character by the way, but she's also the mother of Snap Wexley, also both named Tenman, who she mentioned a few times because, she left her son back on the homeworld, which they re-established here like they established in the Aftermath trilogy. But the main part of this story is really, they have a training exercise and then it's a support game that land is holding right after the training exercise, right before the Battle of Endor. So, they're just, doing what pirates do. Joke around, play some games, blow off some steam, just all that kind of stuff. Kind of seems like standard pirate stuff, and you know what? I'm here for it. It's a great story. We get some more insight into it. I feel like we did have already a fairly good insight to her if you've read the Aftermath trilogy, but if not, this was a great introduction to her character. Thank you for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts on the story, and of course, may the Force be with you. The Man Who Captured Luke Skywalker by Max Gladstone is the 21st story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this is actually quite a fascinating story. It follows the commander of the squad who captured Luke Skywalker, who we do see in the film hand Luke Skywalker over to Vader, but we learn that he was a veteran of the Clone Wars, he bought into the Empire's propaganda about the Jedi, but he actually did fight alongside Jedi, so unlike some people, he actually had some first-hand experience, but it was only one really a great story. But the thing that got me the most was, one, his conversation with Luke, which I think maybe put some doubts into your mind. He thinks he made the right decision at the end, but because at the end, he hears Luke Skywalker say to Darth Vader, "I know, Father." He hears that right before the turbolift door shows us. That's where the story ends. If that doesn't cause him to have some doubt, I don't know what will. But you know what? That's just my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts. And of course, may the Force be with you, always. Akbar by Jared J. Krozka, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, is the 22nd story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. And this one is a comic. It's actually a full-blown comic. I really love that change in how the story is being told, that change in medium compared to just standard story that we're getting. Granted, we do have some, different genres, different narration styles, but this is truly a different form of storytelling. I really did appreciate that. And of course, it's all about Akbar selecting his words to lead his men, leading up to the moment where he says, "It's a trap." I mean, it's just a story leading up to that one iconic moment that has been memed to, well, death, to oblivion, whatever to use. It's one of the most well-known memes besides, I don't like saying it's close to often gets everywhere. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. And of course, may the Force be with you, always. The Impossible Flight of Ash Angels by Mirake Lichkamp, I hope I'm pronouncing the author correctly, is the 23rd story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. And in my opinion, this was the most difficult story to follow. Partially because they kind of jump back and forth between just before the Battle of Endor and this character's journey to join the Rebel Alliance and finding things to actually believe in. That's the part I understood, the overarching, but that jumping around was done in such a weird way that it was hard to follow. Which characters were involved when, besides the main character, and all that. Those individual events were hard to follow. It was hard to follow. What I understood was good, but it was hard to follow. And by the way, the character is Green Squadron leader, and probably the best thing in the story though is the story where he says that you can't take down a Star Destroyer with an A-Wing. Well, guess what he did with an A-Wing in the Battle of Endor? He's the pilot who took down the Executor by flying into the bridge. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts on the story. I would love to hear yours. And of course, may the Force be with you always. Ending Protocol by Hannah Whitman is the 24th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. And this story is following one of the stormtroopers in the Battle of Endor. And one that we find the name is Riz. Her and another one of her shadow troopers, nicknamed Gar, are the ones that approach Han and Leia, and when Han is trying to open the doors to the shield generator building. Gar's the one that's shot, and she just falls down to play dead. You can tell through the story, it's established that she joined the Empire not because of any ideological reasons, but because she wanted basically food and shelter. And the story ends with her surrendering, turning herself into the Rebel Alliance to face justice or torment or whatever for everything that she's done. It's like she, more than once the story now that she was a witness, she was a bystander, she didn't do anything to stop the atrocities, how the Imperial system basically made everyone complicit. That's the thing we saw a lot in the Alphabet Squadron books as well. But I thought this was a really good story. Reading it, I hope she has a happy ending, that she finds some way to live a better life. And I would love to hear your thoughts. And of course, may the Force be with you Always. The Last Flight by Ali Hazelwood is the 25th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. So this is a story that's actually following Red 3, her name being Silly Knot. So we learn about her background growing up, cargo pilot, having a rivalry with one of her neighbors who she later develops feelings for. Of course, she joins the Rebel Alliance while she stays working at the Imperial Research Station until she blows it up, while Red 3 goes on to fight in the battle right after she gets that news, and she's the one. She leads some ties away to help save the rest of Red Squadron. It's a pretty good story. I enjoyed it very much. Got nice to see, how even on backwater planets, the Empire is still, and they're not bugging us too much. We can tolerate them. And yeah, it turns out the Empire is still a bad force. Accidentally kills her parents, and so that is basically the event that makes her really start considering actually joining the rebellion, which she eventually does. But those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts, and of course, may the Force be with you always. 20 and Out by Lamar Gills is the 26th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. And so this is a story of one of the Death Star gunners by the name called Liran. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he's basically, at the time the story is set, this course is about to end, and he's 7 days from retirement. So apparently the Imperial Navy does let you retire. I was honestly not expecting that. I would have expected they would have said, sorry, we're going to have to extend your contract. These rebels are being oppressed. And that might have been what was going to happen, but we do know what happens at the end of the battle, so he doesn't get to retire, but at the same time, he did buy into the Empire, so it is not like he was somebody who joined the Empire looking to get out of a bad situation within poverty. No, it sounds like he actually did admire the Empire in some form. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment section, and of course, may the Force be with you always. The Ballad of Nanta by Sarah Kuhn is the 27th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this is another story that is following an Ewok, specifically Nanta. So he is, he's not the greatest warrior, but he is a storyteller. While he never gets that title part of the tribe, he is a storyteller, and the story is his story, which I gotta say, it's a sad story because he's the Ewok that we see die, and we probably see more than one, but the one die to the walkers, and then his friend, who's Romba, mourns him. But the story does end with Romba returning to the tree that Nanta found, and had been carving stories in with a rock that he stubbed his foot on. And he takes that rock and finishes Nanta's story, creating the Ballad of Nanta. So it's kind of like that little meta thing going on, but also the actual ballad of the story, and then is what we learn, but then also the story that the Ewoks have themselves, which is all connected. Really quite a fascinating story, but that's just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment section, and of course, may the Force be with you always. Then Fall Sidious by Olive Blake is the 28th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. So this is, Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine's story. And it is organized in, I want to say, not, it feels like poetry, but I'm not quite sure. But I feel like it's taking place in the last 10 seconds before Vader throws him over the railing down the Death Star. So that's where it seems, and basically it's him gloating to himself in his head, maybe doing a little bit of speaking with Vader in the Force, but basically he's gloating, I am what's here, basically he's full of himself, his confidence, and at the end, even at the end, he still says, what is it, Lexi? I'm the one who will decide. Even in that last moment, he's still convinced that he's won. But you know what? That is so in character for Palpatine. But what did you think of the story? I would love to hear your thoughts, and of course, may the Force be with you always. Impact by Sean Williams is the 29th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. This story follows one of the bridge officers on board the Executor, specifically one he was conscripted into the Imperial Army. He's also the one who receives the codes from the shuttle that the rebels used to sneak onto Endor. Of course, the story is about him finally choosing his own path, so what does he do? Well, he uses his training to basically sabotage the Executor. He basically disables certain command protocols so that way the Combat Information Center of the ship doesn't take control should the rebels actually managed to destroy the bridge. So basically, in his last 2 minutes of life, he finally makes a choice to basically make his own choice rather than to follow the path set before him. So yeah, he made the right choice in the end. Too bad nobody in the galaxy will know what he did that helped destroy the Executor. But those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours, and of course, may the Force be with you always. Trooper Trouble by Laurel Pohl is the 30th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this is following one of the Stormtroopers. He's mainly, doing stuff on the Death Star. Apparently, his main duties consist of standing in formation, greeting dignitaries, and putting out fires. Okay, and apparently moving stuff around as well. But that's mainly what he's doing. But you know what? He does survive because, well, his unit was transferred down, but he got delayed because he was getting some supplies. But then the battle happened, and he found his way to an escape pod with those supplies because he was being chased by a vengeful astromech droid. But that's how he survived the battle. He ended up landing the Force Room of Endor. Of course, he's probably going to be captured, but you know what? He's just locked up in the escape pod waiting for rescue. It'd probably be more likely he'd be captured. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts on this amazing story, also told in an amazing format, as his log entries. And of course, may the Force be with you always. To the Last by Dana Schwartz is the 31st story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this is the Admiral Piet story. So basically, throughout the entire story, we learn about his life, that basically he was saved once by Imperial officer after he fell off a cliff, and that was basically inspired him to join the Empire. Kind of small, and I think his father wouldn't have been happy about it, but you know what? He's convinced he did everything right to the last moment. Well, guess what? You did make a mistake, and that was joining the Empire. But I really do like how all these certain point of view stories all weaving together. We had got in the story of the A-Wing pod. We got the story of one of the officers on the bridge who actually made it possible for the A-Wing to destroy the ship. I just like how all this stuff is weaving together, but these are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment section. And of course, may the Force be with you always. The Emperor's Red Guards by Gloria Chow is the 32nd story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. So this story is following one of the Emperor's Red Guards. Of course, he sees himself as loyal to the Emperor, devoted, all that, and he sees the same thing in his fellow guard, but he also has some doubt, he hears the Emperor scream, he thinks to himself, maybe I should go in, but he doesn't. But yeah, he does survive though. Him and his fellow guard, they actually get into a fight because his fellow guard wants to just seek revenge blindly while he pieced together that, wait a second, Vader killed the Emperor, not Skywalker. And they fight, and then he does survive the fight and is saved by Luke. And then he's just wondering what he's going to do now. But you know what? It's a good story, and those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment section. And of course, may the Force be with you always. Wolf Trap by Alyssa Wong is the 33rd story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this story follows another scout trooper. Of course, he's not a regular scout trooper because he joined the Empire so that way he could earn credits to get him and a significant other off the home planet, and he also wants to give information to the Rebel Alliance. Well, unlucky for him, he's assigned to Endor, and he has to deal with the Ewoks, so he's unable to really do either. But you know what? He does eventually escape the Ewoks after he's captured. He does have to cut his finger off in order to slip through the ropes, but you know what? It's just like the wolf that him and his significant other counted once on the home planet during a hunting trip. The wolf gnawed off its own leg to escape a trap. Very much the same. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment section down below. And of course, may the Force be with you always. The Extra 5% by M.K. England is the 34th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this story follows one of the Rebel pilots, that being Yellow 9, and well, this is actually her first combat mission, because everything she's done previously for the Rebel Alliance, well, that was mostly maintenance and, flying some transports and charges, but not actual, flying a fighter. But the story is a really good story, and basically she promised herself to tell basically her best friend what she actually feels about her, which sounds like they're going to do on the Force Move Endor, and based on the writing, sounds like it's mutual. Hopefully it works out for them. Probably will. It's a good story, and she survives the battle thanks to the work her best friend, her future significant other, did on her X-Wing to give the thrusters an extra 5%. And that helped her get away from the Death Star blast. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment section. And of course, may the Force be with you always. When Fire Mocked the Sky by Emma Meeker Candon is the 35th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this is the Wedge story. So there's two parts of this story. One where we get insight into Wedge's character, which is great. Though I gotta say, he definitely needs to, well, as he acknowledges, needs to, not necessarily loosen up, but, move on from being a soldier, or more accurately, being able to think of possibilities for what's next. But another part is showing him as a commander. Through these stories, we saw a lot of rebel pilots, got to learn about them. And the other names showed up again in this story. Some of the same events are shown, but this time from Wedge's perspective. And we get to see him as a commander too, which I really love seeing that both parts of him. But you know what? These are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comments. And of course, may the Force be with you always. The Chronicler by Danielle Page is the 36th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. And this story is about one of the Rebel Alliance's chroniclers, one of their historians, Dora Ma. And, well, it's a great story. We get a lot of insight into actually a lot of the heroes through this character's perspective. But more importantly, we get insights into her and how she's adjusting from simply, collecting data and all that to actually telling, taking interviews and telling the stories, becoming an actual historian, figuring out what makes people tick, and what the stories that she ends up writing are about Leia, but also two other characters, Ola and Jess. Two characters that we already read about earlier in the book, so kind of nice thing touching up there, and does make me wonder, could there be some nice some meta connections going on? But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment section. And of course, may the Force be with you always. The Veteran by Adam Lance Garcia is the 37th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this story is following Dexter Jettster. So that's right, a character from Attack of the Clones is getting his own story in here. But essentially, a big part of the story, a big part of his characterization is that Dexter Jettster blames himself for the rise of the Empire because he basically, because he told Obi-Wan Kenobi the information that led him to Kamino, which introduced the Stormtroopers, and so forth from there. He blames himself for that, and he partially also blames himself for extinguishing the light of the Jedi. But over the course of the story, not only does he help get a lot of people to safety to prevent them from being stampeded and a stampede that the Empire is trying to cause, but he also witnesses a young girl save a stormtrooper and basically pleading to call not to be like the Empire, that he later meets in his old diner again while he's also leaving the scene, and gives her basically the advice that there's some truths and legends, and he also thinks to himself that he can help a little bit restore the light of the Jedi there. It's really a great story, and yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say, but I would love to hear your thoughts, and of course, may the Force be with you always. Brotherhood by Mike Chen is the 38th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this is Anakin Skywalker's story. Not Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker. That's very important to the story. It's basically him becoming one with the Force. In many ways, it's some very, I don't want to say meta, because that's not it at all, but, it's definitely just like kind of similar to when we got Obi-Wan's story becoming one of the Force. It's a bit, not cerebral, but a bit more, a bit, flowery, philosophical, if you will. But basically, what it is he finally learns the lesson that he needs to learn. He learned to let go. Which hard to explain exactly what. Just read it for yourself. That's the best way to understand this story. But those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment section. And of course, may the Force be with you always. The Steadfast Soldier by Adam Christopher is the 39th story in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and this is a story of future Allegiant General Pride from the Rise of Skywalker. Now, there's a lot I could say about the plot, but that's not what I'm going to say too much about. The main thing is the story is, Pride basically, his goal is to survive and gain his own power. But he doesn't want to survive by being a simple bureaucrat. No, he wants a little more than that. But yeah, his main goal is survival, but with everything that has happened, he sees an opportunity for himself. An opportunity to take power and to contribute to his own survival. He's still loyal to the Empire, but he wants to now to take the power to enhance his own survival. That is the key takeaway from the story. And definitely, you can definitely tell, not only does he play a role in the first order, but also the final order. You can see those seeds planted here. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment section. And of course, may the Force be with you always. Return of the Wildes by Tom Engelberger is the 40th story in Star Wars, Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, and just like all the other times in the From a Certain Point of View books, this is a story that tells, well, the story of the Wildes, which is one Will writing the story of the episode. This is probably the most meta one, but like they saw in a reference here to the original title, Return of the Jedi, being Revenge of the Jedi. Not only that, but Tom also mentions Caravan of Courage, and like throughout, he's had this thread of two Wildes who are kind of bickering. Well, they both like Ewoks, so they think this might be a time for a friendship, and the other one is gonna be writing the prequel trilogy, not the sequel trilogy, but they do throw out a reference to both, and I mean, it's just a great fun story, but those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comment section, and of course, may the Force be with you always. So now that we've gone over all the stories in Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, let's talk about the book as a whole. To begin with, it is a phenomenal book. All the stories were amazing, excellent. Some of them I preferred more than others, but you know what? That's always going to happen when you get multiple installments in one work. There's always going to be parts that you prefer over other parts. Some more comedic, some more tragic, some more thought-provoking, some more, hey, this is just fun. Like, you'll get all that stuff, and what I really enjoyed about this book is I got a little bit of everything with that, a little bit of each. Some stories, like I said, were much more on the comedic side, like the Akbar story, which was a comic. That was entirely comedic, building up to, what in universe is probably a very serious moment, the rebels realizing it's a trap, but we've memed it to death, made it a super comedic moment. And even in its original presentation, it is still kind of comedic. But we got other things where, like, we learn about individual pilots, individual Imperials. They learn about the tragic past for some of the Imperials that brought them to the Empire. How some of them do wish they could get out of it, but they don't have any opportunity. Some who are looking for an opportunity to get out. Some who are diehards who, they don't realize that they're doing bad. And you also get the hopefulness from all the rebels. The hope for a better future. Hope to reunite with the family. Everything under the sun. Then we also get the Jabba's Palace stories, which, oh man, those stories, those were actually some of the most tragic ones. Because with a lot of the Imperials, you could see their position was kind of their own doing. But with lots of the people in Jabba's Palace, not all of them, but a lot of them, especially when it comes to the performers and dancers, a lot of them were like, they were in a crappy situation and they were just trying to do their best to survive. While others, the bounty hunters mainly were the ones who typically had, their downfall was their own doing more than likely. But yeah, like I said, all these stories are great. All of them work together to really enrich the story experience of Return of the Jedi, learning about these individual characters. And I just want to, I mentioned this earlier, but there were scenes that overlapped with each other, where we got to see the same scene from multiple characters' perspective, which was amazing. Like, scenes that were not even in the film, but we got the same events told, but from different characters' perspectives, so they were thinking about different things. We also got, in the story of the Chronicler, I forget her character's name already, but then how she's interviewing Princess Thea, and basically the stories of two of the Jabba Palace characters are mentioned. Granted, only one we actually got the story of in the book. Or did we get Ola's story in the book? I don't remember. Granted, it could be also confusing with the book Tales from Jabba's Past, which did have an Ola story, so there's that. But anyhow, this did a lot in bringing these stories together, showing how things are connected, seems connected. Like, they really did such a good job. I actually did mention Tales from Jabba's Past, which is a Legends book, but again, at least one character, because I know we did get the story of the Rancor Keeper, and it was a different story, but like, we got stories of characters from Jabba's Palace, and this, the from a certain point of view, kind of the Tales of series that was done in Legends, kind of similar vein, but I really like how we get a lot more from a certain point of view. We're getting, all of them are short stories, but we're getting so many different views that we can really enrich the experience of the overarching story. There's a lot more I could say, but you know what? Let's open the discussion up. There's a comment section down below, so put in there, what did you think is either from a certain point of view Return of the Jedi as a whole, or which was your favorite story, or just comparing to, it doesn't matter. Let's get a discussion going about the stories and the book as a whole. I think it would be amazing and fun, so let's get that going. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. I do hope you enjoyed it, and of course, may the Force be with you always. Thank you for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give this video a like, as well as subscribe to my channel and ring that bell to stay up to date on my latest content. Also, be sure to check out the link tree in the description, as well as any other links I have down there.